Hello, it is September 27th, 2024, and this is Casey Mo Reacts. Today, well, there's some news that came out. Well, I mean, there's always news. Apparently in the Kupiansk direction in Ukraine, about 50 vehicles, tanks, BMPs, or maybe BMTs, one of the two, basically 50 armored vehicles of various types wiped by Ukraine. Why is this significant? It's 50 of them. 50 is an entire battalion tactical group, which is the core maneuvering base of the core maneuvering unit of the Russian army. At the beginning of the full-scale invasion, they had, I think, about 170 of them. This one just, all their vehicles wiped out. This illustrates exactly why, saying that, why just looking at the map and going, oh, well, you know, Ukraine is being pushed back meter by meter, really doesn't hold up at all. Why that isn't something that should even be really considered, because this was in a place that I mean, there's been fighting in this area for over a year. You know, Kupiansk is something you keep hearing about time and time again. If you follow the battles, if you follow what's happening in Ukraine, they have various directions. Kupiansk and there's, oh my God, there's so many of them, and honestly, I have trouble keeping up with them because I'm an American. But I do follow along, and this is something that isn't really talked about in the media at all, and it allows for a lot of disinformation to be spread. You know, the whole narrative that Ukraine is somehow losing the war. You look at what Russia is expending. It's tremendous. I mean, if the army came back and said, oh, we just lost, 50 armored vehicles in a battle, feeding them, through feeding them, into a meat grinder, there would be a congressional inquiry. There would be all sorts of stuff. It would be unthinkable, intolerable that kind of situation would arise. I mean, it's war, right? There's stuff happens. You lose troops, you lose vehicles, you lose entire large units sometimes. But this isn't actually all that unusual. I mean, it's unusual that there's an entire battalion in one day. But they also got another one in a convoy. 50, 49, 50 vehicles there. I think that was yesterday. This keeps happening. It's just one after another. And I mean, decades. Ukraine has destroyed decades of Soviet and Russian military vehicle production. There's a video that was shown. I think it was Arturedhi earlier today. Had showed a reaction that an injured member of the VDV, which is their which is Russia's paratrooper force. This guy's been torn up in battle. His arm is half paralyzed. His wounds haven't been properly treated. They've healed, and rather than being dismissed by the military because he's not able to really function as a soldier, He's going to Storm Z, the Storm Z unit instead, because that's what they have to do in order to keep feeding this. That armored, that battalion was most likely a Storm Z unit. They're there literally to die, so that other Ukrainians can, or so that other Russians, and I apologize, so other Russians can see where the Ukrainians are shooting from and pinpoint them. And they're not expected to survive. They don't really get medical care. If they happen to be evacuated for some, because someone somewhere took some measure of pity on them. There's videos of them in hospitals getting beaten because they needed they were asking for more medical care. Beaten by doctors in the hospital or nurses or I don't know, hospital staff. And this guy who was very highly trained, that's where he was going to, because they didn't want to take the time to fix him up properly. And they sent their aircraft carrier crew into combat. It's just incredible. They're eating themselves up. This is unsustainable. This is unsustainable for any country. They're hollowing themselves out. They're destroying themselves. And you know what? Let them destroy themselves. Let them continue doing this. Give Ukraine everything it needs to win, because Russia's already lost. Russia's already lost. Oh yeah. Oh, the Russians are finally moving into a town that they've been attacking with frontal assaults for the last 2.5 years. Small town did happen to have a bunch of old, probably Khrushchev era apartment buildings, very solidly built, most likely built to protect against bombs and stuff. And after 2.5 years, they can't defend that place anymore. But in the meantime, Russia's lost literally, most likely tens of thousands of soldiers and equipment, assaulting this small town over and over and over again. It's amazing. It's amazing that somebody can look at this and say, "Oh, but Russia's winning." They're not. They've already lost. They cannot maintain this. Nobody can. No country can. Russia's goal is to make as many drones in this next year as Ukraine made this year. Ukraine's dealing with their manpower issues by sending robot dogs in to attack Russian trenches successfully, I might add. Not only that, but they're dropping their drone dogs from drone birds. It's kind of funny. They now have they have drones that piggyback on bigger drones for longer reaches. These are not things that Russia can counter. They don't have the resources to counter it. Ukraine's short of resources, but Russia is far, far worse. They're pulling stuff out that's 75 years old out of storage. In the meantime, we're giving Ukraine our old stuff and replacing it with new stuff. And that old stuff was built in the 80s and 90s, so it's fairly old, but it's also very well maintained. They're finally getting they're getting more F-16s. I think I saw that like 24 by the end of the year. Russia is not getting new planes, period. They don't have the ability to do so. Russia's big scary nuclear missile that they've been hyping up, and this is going to, destroy London in three minutes after launch or something like that. Their hypersonic missile, which every ICBM is a hypersonic missile. The only reason why they're pushing this so much is because the people who built their ICBM rocket engines and who can rebuild them are in Ukraine. And their homebrewed stuff. I'm sure if you've been following Ukrainian news, you've seen the big crater left in the launch site, or the test launch site. Again, I think 5 out of 6 tests have failed, and 5 of the last 5, or at least I haven't seen them all, but those were the reports. It's absolutely stunning just what Russia's doing to itself. I think the only thing that I have to reference, that I can use as a reference for this, is Joe Kasabian on Lions Led by Donkeys, which is an excellent podcast. Check that out. He did a multi-episode series on the War of the Triple Alliance, which Americans don't generally hear about because it was happening while our Civil War was going on. So, we were busy with other stuff. I think Paraguay held out for 10 years, or at least their leadership did, tramping through It took Paraguay a century for its population to recover. Their GDP is never going to match what it would have been without that war. And that's what's happening in Russia right now. Now Putin's old. Their whole leadership is old. I saw it all listed on somebody else's channel. Maybe it's Jake Bro. I forget who it was, but just showed all of the listing of Putin and everybody else and their ages, and they're all old. Next 10 years, they're all going to die. I don't think that they're going to be tramping around, the wild areas with child soldiers like they did, like the president in Paraguay did back in the 1860s. But they're doing everything else they can to kind of mimic that, and in fact speedrun it, because they're stripping themselves of combat effectiveness far faster than Paraguay did, which probably has to do with today's stuff is far more advanced. You're no longer like just churning out rifles in a simple factory, in a simple forge, and like you were in the 1860s. You have to have more advanced stuff in order to fight. Uzbekistan left kind of their area of influence. They signed an agreement with Immigration and Customs Enforcement to help them crack down on sanctions violations. They were a big way that Russia was beating sanctions. I mean, they're in a corner. They can't make this stuff. They are running out of. I'm gonna say it. They're running out of people. They can't shovel people in fast enough because Ukraine kills them too quickly. They're not going to increase their army size. Putin signed the order, but it's not going to happen because they can't. You can't arm them. You can't equip them. You can't do any of this stuff. They need to do. They're not even training them at. Most of the time, they've lost. they've lost. Somehow we're trying to make sure that I don't know what we're trying to do. Seems like we're trying to protect Russia more than we're trying to protect Ukraine. Because for some reason, powers that be look at Russia as essential. As an essential part of the world order. Maybe it's because of that seat on the Security Council that they stole. Remember, the Soviet Union held the chair of the Security Council in 1991 when the Soviet Union dissolved, and he, in the last order of business for the day, was he announced that Russia was taking the place, gavelled it closed, and that was it. It was done. Nobody else agreed that Russia should be the successor to the Soviet Union. It was just presented as this is what's happening, and nobody at the time thought to, had time to oppose it, which that was done intentionally. And you can make a good case that that seat should be gone. Because the Soviet Union, that country, no longer existed. And we've always protected that. There was a time back in the early 90s, I remember when I was in high school, and they were asking for us to send over civics teachers and people like that. Yeltsin was asking the U.S. to supply these things so that Russians could learn what it meant to be citizens rather than subjects. There's a big difference. How to build a free press and an independent media. He didn't really do that. I mean, we helped them secure their nuclear assets. That's what we were concerned about. It's all we've really been concerned about. And that was basically the extent of our aid to them. We didn't provide any of the social, any of the soft stuff that they asked for. We had an opportunity there, and instead we let it slip by and let a KGB hardliner seize control of the country. And instead of gravitating towards NATO, which Russia had been doing, they have another authoritarian whose fundamental belief is that the West is trying to destroy the Slavic race. And of course, the Slavic race means Russia. There are other Slavs, but they don't really count. The Slavs only exist because of Russia. And that's really what this is all about. And people like to blame it all on Putin, and it's not all on Putin. He had political mentors, absolute batshit crazy people, but he had political mentors who were backing him. They were laying claims back in the 90s that Alaska needed to be retaken from them, from the U.S. That everything that once was claimed by Russia in some form needed to be a part of Russia. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen right now, is this reclaiming, this attempted reclaiming. And it's a horrible, horrible thing. But at the end of the day, if that's a decision that the country of Russia has decided, if that's their decision, that that's the road they want to go down, that kind of thing just is not tolerable. Every country out there can basically lay claim to every other country through some kind of historical conquest or something. And there literally is no end to where that can go. And so it's best to just not allow anybody to do that. And if somebody insists on doing it, then if a country decides on going down that path, then maybe things just need to be they just need to be worn down to where they just can't threaten anybody else. At least not for a couple generations, and maybe then you can, maybe they can learn to not do that again. Or maybe they'll just repeat it. It's their choice. But they're losing the war. They're losing the war. They're going to lose. It's inevitable. The only question is how many Ukrainians are going to die first. I like to minimize that damage. I like the Ukrainian culture. I like the Ukrainian people. I'm sure there's assholes. There's assholes everywhere, but, they were the ones that they were the engineers that made the Soviet Union great, despite the Soviet Union trying to kill them. It's a very conflicted history. They're a very... Anyway, that's all I had. Russia continues to beat itself against Ukrainian lines. Battalion gone 2 days ago, another battalion gone today, and just in terms of vehicles that they can't replace. I mean, they can pull more out of storage, but they only have so much left. Thousands and thousands of them have been destroyed. Thousands and thousands others will never run again because they've been cannibalized to get others going. It's depressing. This shouldn't happen, but it is. So this is the world we live in. And I hope everybody out there has a good weekend. I hope that wherever you are, you're not dodging death from the skies. If you are, then good luck, and I hope that you can watch more videos. We're doing our best to help you. Sometimes our leaders make it hard. In the meantime, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Help somebody else over the weekend, even if it's in a small way. Just a small way. And I'll see you next time.